And we can speak to Panos Moumtzis, the UN Assistant Secretary General and Regional Humanitarian Coordinator for the Syria Crisis. He is at that donor conference in Brussels that we mentioned is taking place today, sponsored by the EU and the UN. Mr. Moumtzis, thank you very much for joining us. How much money are you aiming to raise, and how optimistic are you that you can reach that goal?
Well, the needs are quite tremendous. So in between $3.3 billion required for inside Syria and $5.6 billion for the neighboring countries. So we're just under $9 billion to cover the basic humanitarian needs for the Syrian people, both inside and the neighboring countries. We hope to be able to raise really most of it or as much of it as possible. The situation in Syria is so dramatic, with close to 12 million people in need of humanitarian assistance, 6 million displaced, and urgent needs and continuous displacement even in 2019. So the funding will not solve the issue, but will certainly alleviate the urgent needs of the Syrian people.
What are the most urgent needs at the moment?
Well, there are really needs on all areas. There's needs for food, for health, for water, for sanitation, for shelter, for education. More than 2 million children are outside schools. But most of all, Syrians, of course, ask to have support in terms of peace and stability. The needs are dramatic inside Syria because also the conflict has been going on now for 8th year, on its 9th year. More than 83% of the Syrian people are living below the poverty line. So there's an erosion of the economic system which impacts lives of people. And of course, also the neighboring countries have done tremendously well on hosting. So host communities as well as really being quite overstretched.
And yet the current regime under President Assad is still in charge of the country. How can you ensure that the money is directed towards those in need?
Well, as United Nations, we work with a number of partners, NGOs, international and non-governmental organizations, national Syrian civil society organizations, and this is part of our accountability on delivering assistance to make sure that aid is delivered directly to the people in need. We feel fairly confident. We have really put mechanisms in place where we distribute assistance. We work with everybody, both in government and non-government control areas, to address these needs. This is really important in terms of maintaining the donor confidence of the various capitals and the support we get. The government of Germany, the people of Germany, have been tremendously helpful and generous in supporting in this operation. So I just want to also say a big thank you to all of them.
Mr. Moumtzis, as you said, we are going on 9 years of war in Syria. During that time, this conflict has often fallen out of the spotlight, out of the headlines. Has the international community failed to really address this very dire humanitarian situation in Syria?
Well, there's huge frustration, and you also heard it in the voice of the Syrians who were just on the video before this interview. Frustration and really need to move forward in a way that would be satisfactory for the people of Syria. The humanitarian dramatic situation and the response we provide alleviate the need, but clearly the humanitarian response is not the solution to a political problem. So we hope very much in 2019 to see an improvement on all fronts, and an improvement, of course, on the humanitarian needs as well in the country.
Panos Moumtzis, the UN Assistant Secretary General and Regional Humanitarian Coordinator for the Syria Crisis. Thank you very much for joining us on DW.
Thank you.